you.
Right, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Faye D'Souza. We're still taking a look at what's happening with the farm laws because so many of you have written in with questions. Like I said, there is a conversation we've uploaded with P. Sainath where he takes a look at the steps taken by government, analyzes what this decision, what the political motivations of this decision are, and the impact of the decision that is likely to be going forward. But we do know now that the farmers, like we brought up, we said to you last time, have said that they will not take their protest back unless the government meets all of their demands. Now, you will remember, even when the farmers were protesting back in the day, we brought you several stories about the fact that it was not just the 3 farm laws that they were protesting. There was also a demand for a legal right to MSP. There was also a demand on the cases that were registered on stubble burning and electricity. So the farmers have now released a letter with 6-point demands to the Prime Minister, which has been published. Let me just take you through what those demands are. And to then help us understand those demands, we have Mr. Yogendra Yadav, who's been very kind to join us this evening. Mr. Yadav, thank you for joining us. Just to read out those 6 demands for our audience very quickly. First of all, the MSP based on comprehensive cost of production to be made a legal entitlement. Remember, there were differences of opinion on how to calculate that MSP. Secondly, withdrawal of the draft electricity amendments bill. Third, umbrella body of farmer unions who sought withdrawal of cases against the farmers. So basically, they were cases that were filed against farmers. They want those cases withdrawn. They want a memorial built for the protesters who lost their lives. They want the penal, provisions brought against farmers on stubble burning to be removed as well. They want compensation and rehabilitation for the 700 farmers, families, the 700 farmers who died during the agitation. And of course, they've asked for the sacking and the arrest of Union Minister of State Ajay Mishra, whose son is the key accused in the Lakhimpur Kheri incident. Now, these are the 6 demands that have been put forward. If I may take them one by one, Mr. Yadav, first talking about MSP, there have been several opinions, including a member of the government's committee, the Supreme Court's committee, who said that a legal grant of legal right of MSP is not viable. The government cannot afford it. The country cannot afford it, and so that is something that simply cannot be met. What is your response to that? And does the union actually believe this is something that can be done right now?
Thanks, Faye. Allow me to begin with a general comment before I come to this specific issue. Prime Minister has made a declaration. It's a very major victory. We don't underestimate it. And the Sanयुkt Kisan Morcha has clearly said in unambiguous terms that we welcome it. Having said that, we have actually raised, we have simply said, look, there are certain issues that we have been talking about, which your speech has not touched upon. So the 6 points that you have spoken about are basically in 2 baskets. One, there are 3 issues that we have placed on the table right from day 1 in every single round of conversation with Government of India, those negotiations. We had always placed these 3 issues on the table. That's one basket. Second is a routine basket, which happens at the end of any agitation or movement towards the end game. There are some issues that come up in the course of the movement, which are related to the process of the movement itself. So you have to sort it out. These are the 2 baskets. There's nothing unusual about it. The whole idea, the way it's being presented in the media, as if goalposts is being new demands from farmers, all this is complete negative propaganda. We have not raised any new demands at all. The 3 demands in the first basket are, number 1, MSP, number 2, withdrawal of electricity draft, number 3 is the stubble burning issue, the air pollution. All these 3 issues we have raised in every single meeting. The government has acknowledged in writing that we have made these points. So what is this hoo-ha about? Now coming to the specific question of the MSP, because that is the biggest issue. If I were to think of one issue, in every meeting that we went to, in every speech that we delivered, We always said तीन काले कानून वापस लो और उसके बदले MSP की कानूनी गारंटी दो. This was the central message. Half of it the Prime Minister has addressed. The other half he has not. So what does the government expect us to do? They expect us to forget because the Prime Minister has forgotten something. They expect us to say, thank you very much. We now don't bother about anything else and goodbye, Tata. I mean, is that what we expect? On the MSP, now let me, because there's so much of confusion and propaganda, let me clarify what the demand is. We are saying that every farmer in this country should, by legal guarantee, secure what the government calls minimum support price. Now, notice a few things. Number one, we are saying that please implement what the government says. This is simply like saying, please implement minimum wages law. There are minimum wages in the country. And if someone were to say, please implement it, do you think it's a ridiculous thing to ask for? The government of India has been declaring for the last 50 years, more than 50 years, something called minimum support price, which is in a sense an assurance from the government to the farmer. Go ahead, sow a crop, you will get at least this much minimum. What does that assurance mean if it cannot be made good? This fraud has been perpetuated with the farmers over the last 50 years. The government declares something, and when the farmer does not get it, and which is routinely the case, the government is nowhere to be seen. So we are simply, please make it legal. Now the question is, how do you make it legal? What do you do? And Faye, we must remember that this demand has been a very old demand of the farmer. Something that Mr. Narendra Modi himself endorsed in 2011 when he was chairing a chief ministerial committee, which submitted its recommendations to the then Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh. So we are asking the Prime Minister to please remember what Mr. Narendra Modi the issue, how to make this promise good. What is the way to make it, to realize it? There are two extreme suggestions that are made. We should move away from that. There are two misconceptions. First misconception is that in order to make this promise good, the government of India will have to purchase all the 23 commodities, all crops. The government of India would have to put it in its godown. Isn't that a ridiculous idea? Oh my God, how can they do it, etc. That is not what is required. And you must have heard those ridiculous claims, government will go bankrupt if we give this. Where do those claims come from? They come from an assumption. Now just listen to this. If the government of India were to purchase all the 23 crops, major 23 crops for which MSP is declared, and then put it all in Indian Ocean, then of course government of India will go bankrupt. But is that what we are asking? So that's one ridiculous thing. We are not demanding that. On the other hand, there is this minimalist notion that the government of India should simply issue a two-line order saying no purchase below MSP will be allowed in any mandi. That is not good either, because the traders would say, thank you very much. I'm putting my shutters down. I'm not going to purchase it. Do what you like. These are non-solutions. What is the real solution? We are not saying that government should purchase every dana. We are saying the farmer should be, the government must ensure that farmer gets the price for every single dana. How would that happen? 4 things can be done. Number 1, the government does procurement largely of 2 commodities in the country, namely wheat and paddy. It can be expanded. Lots of dals can and should be purchased. We have a serious malnutrition problem in this country. Protein major source is dal. And Arvind Subramaniam committee has recommended these things. Why can't the government just start encouraging the farmers to produce more dal, purchase it, distribute it in Russia and so on? The government can also start purchasing more of coarse grain, bajra, ragi. This is the most nutritious diet that you can have in this country. So solution number 1 is expand the existing procurement. Solution number 2, The government need not purchase the crop. The government has to make good the difference. I'll give you an example recently from Haryana. The scheme has some problems, but I'll give you the basic example. The MSP rate is 2,250 rupees. The government said that the average market rate was 1,650 rupees. So the government, instead of purchasing, Haryana government said, we are not going to purchase the crop and then keep it and then sell it. We don't want to get into this hassle. We'll simply pay 600 rupees per quintal to every farmer. Deficit payment. I'm not getting into all the problems that they faced in the scheme because there were problems, needs to be improved. But deficit payment, this happens all over the world. Why not do it? That's number two. Number three, the government can intervene in the market to ensure that prices don't fall, intervene selectively in the market. That scheme does exist even now, except that the government of India doesn't allot any money for that scheme. Please do that regularly. Number four, improve your import and export policy so that domestic market prices don't fall because of your cheap imports from outside. If the government of India were to do those four things, every farmer can get MSP for every single crop. And if you retain the MSP at present level, because raising MSP is a different demand altogether, that's it. If you were to calculate it at present MSP, Faye, the bill by any calculation is not more than 50,000 crore rupees. And I'm being liberal here. And I'm happy to share all the details and Excel sheets if you want.
See, Yadav, there is obviously criticism, and I'll come to the stubble burning as well. There's criticism of the fact that it is this sort of MSP that has led to, for example, Punjab growing a lot of rice, which is a water guzzler, which they shouldn't be growing. Our godowns that the government has procured large amounts of wheat and rice that are actually rotting away. And as a result, we have an oversupply of these two grains and maybe an undersupply of the actual food grains that we need to provide nutrition to the poor children of our country. Would you say that a legal assurance of MSP will make that problem worse?
Again, complete false propaganda, factually untrue. The truth part is, yes, we have overproduction of paddy and wheat in some ways. But the reasoning that it is because of MSP, this is pure nonsense. I'll give you the reason and you'll understand in 1 minute. The reason, Faye, is this, that the government announces MSP for 23 crops, but actually realizes it only for 2 crops. Now, if you were the farmer, Faye, what would you do? Would you grow those remaining 21 crops or would you grow these 2 crops? You would grow these 2 crops because these are the only 2 crops where you have assurance of getting money. This is what the farmers are doing. If the government were to do what we are asking for, if the government were to say, not only will you get it for wheat and rice, you would also get it for dal, you would also get it for coarse grain. Farmers are not in love with wheat or rice. I mean, take my area, Haryana and Punjab. Rice is not my staple diet. When I was a child, I did not know that you eat rice with dal. The only way we would eat rice once in 15 or 20 days was with ghee and bura. I mean, we had sweet rice. I didn't know how to eat rice. In my area, if rice is being grown, it's obviously not out of any love for rice. It is because of the compulsion that this is the only crop where they hope the government would intervene and actually give them the price. Start giving them price for chana, give it for moong, give it for ragi, give it for bajra. They would start growing that. So actually the reasoning is exactly the opposite of what is being said. It is not because of MSP. It is because of selective procurement in MSP. Stop selective procurement, broaden the base, and much of the problem would be resolved.
I have no questions or arguments on the 2 points about the Lakhimpur Kheri incident and what needs to be done there, or about the compensation for the families of the farmers who lost their lives. I do have a serious question about withdrawing the cases on the Stubble Burning Act, which is the Commission for Air Quality Management of the National Capital Region and adjoining areas. You, Mr. Yadav, live in Delhi. Delhi is toxic right now, not just, I mean, given the fact that we're coming out of 2 waves of COVID, people's lungs have been weakened. Don't you believe, farmer or otherwise, everyone should actually at this point pitch in to bring down that pollution, and this law is one way to keep people from burning stubble. Would we be able to achieve anything if we withdrew these penal provisions?
One factual correction, we are not saying withdrawal of cases. What we have said is that penal provision in the law should be withdrawn. The fact, Faye, is that the government has actually withdrawn many of these. Originally, the law said that farmers can be penalized with the 1 crore rupee fine and up to 5 years of jail. Both the provisions were withdrawn by the government in the March. But the government actually inserted one more thing, saying, however, the commission can decide to penalize anyone. So, is please remove the penalty provision. Does it mean that stubble burning is not a problem? It is a problem, not just for Delhi. First of all, remember, Faye, it's a problem for the village in which this is being burned. I mean, after all, they are the first victims of that. It contributes. 4% figure is slightly misleading, I concede, because 4% is an annual average. But for that particular 10 days period, it is intense. It is an issue. It should be reduced. There's absolutely no two ways about it. The question is, what route do you take to reduce it? Is penal provision the way, or is supporting and subsidizing and incentivizing? In this particular instance, farmers are not fond. This is not a pataka that they are burning on Diwali. This is not something they are fond of. This is not pleasure. What is the reason why farmers are resorting to this? Because in Haryana and Punjab, the government has laid down a date before which you cannot sow paddy. So the crop harvesting is delayed. There's very little gap between paddy harvesting and wheat sowing. So what is the answer? The answer is either remove the earlier limit, give them a bigger window. 2, the Supreme Court has itself start paying them 100 rupees per quintal and then demand that they should implement certain things, or make it easy for them to access the machine which is required to actually put them in the, in a sense, put them in the soil itself. So the only way, and this is something which all experts have said, which the Supreme Court has underlined, help the farmers to not need it. So I'm not saying celebrate stubble burning. I'm simply saying use incentive mechanism, not penal provisions. In this instance, penal provisions simply don't work.
Mr. Yadav, I do want to ask you right now about the decisions that the government has made and their political motivations, perhaps, for that decision, being the Uttar Pradesh elections and to some extent maybe Punjab elections. Would you tell us right now what the thinking is within the farmer unions? Do they expect that we know that the MSP demand is not something that's likely to happen in the near future. So is it likely these protests will go on into early next year as well?
We don't know that, Faye, because on 27th, the larger meeting is to take place. We have sent our response to the government, and we would wait for the government response. And I sincerely hope tomorrow the cabinet is meeting. I'm hoping that tomorrow, the day after, we should have some response from the government, because I think it stands reason. The government had 11 rounds of talk with us. Then for 10 months, they don't speak to us. Then they make a unilateral declaration. What does the government expect? They expect us to pack our bags and leave and say, whatever things you forgot, it's all right. We've also forgotten whatever you forgot. I mean, is that the way you do it? Any such thing ends with a final. There has to be a sort of, there has to be a two-way conversation where they say, okay, we've done this much. We can't do that much. Sorry, we won't give you this, but we can understand this, etc. So I'm really hoping the government would carry on the spirit of what the Prime Minister said he was doing and have this final round of conversation. If we do, then obviously we know where we stand. If we don't, then on 27th, we meet and decide the course of action. What I can tell you is these issues are not going to fade away. These issues are here to stay. Especially the MSP issue. It is here to stay. Our struggle is here to stay. What form the struggle would take place is something that we need to decide. We need to collectively arrive at. You don't use the same form of struggle for every kind of issue. So depending on what the government does on the cases, on the MSP, we would take a view on that.
You see, Yadav, there is now a view, and this is not a view that's misplaced, because the Swaminathan Committee report, for example, has been sitting on tables in various governments, previous government and this government now for the better part of 15 years. The view now is that because the Modi government has burnt its fingers so badly and perhaps also embarrassed itself with these farm laws, that the likelihood of any sort of reform, with or without the farmers, is not going to happen now for maybe the next few years, because nobody is going to want to take that risk anymore. What is your point of view there? Do you believe that and there is desperate need for reform, do you think that the farmers now are sentenced to another 10 years without any sort of improvement because of the political fallout of this move, this misadventure?
Wait, what is reform? The trouble is that this word has been captured. The word has been hijacked by the pink press. A few persons in this country who speak English and who say they know economics, they have simply, and who are largely from pro-business background, pro-corporate background, they have simply captured this word. So whatever Mr. Adani in reform, whatever goes against him is non-reform. Whenever the poor get something, it is a dole. When Mr. Ambani gets a dole, it's reform. What, to my mind, and going by old English definitions, reform is an improvement in something. So, are you suggesting that no future government will have the courage to improve the conditions of farmers? No, there's no reason the government should be incentivized. I'm sure they would actually wish to do more of it. But if improving the lot, so the entire thing comes from this mindset. In order to improve Indian agriculture, you have to punish the farmers. You have to do things against the wishes of the farmers in order to improve the condition of Indian agriculture and in order to improve the condition of farmers. This is an old colonial mentality. This is a mentality that infantilizes the farmers. Remember, there has been a long view that you have to do things against women's expressed desire in order to improve their lot, because they're incapable of thinking, you see. Now, that mindset will certainly take a backseat. Yes, not only 10 years, I'm hoping for the next 20 years, no government would have the gumption to force things down the throat of farmers. And isn't that a nice thing this way? Should be celebrated. Shouldn't we expect the same to happen in the case of workers, in the case of women, in the case of Adivasis, in the case of everyone in this country? I would expect the same to happen in the case of climate change negotiations at the global level. So the issue is that, yes, genuine agriculture reforms, things which are meant to and are seen to be improving the lot of the farmers, can and should be done. Let me mention a few things right away. Improving marketing systems. Which farmer in this country is going to oppose less politicization in the APMC mandis? No one. Which farmer in this country would say that the manner in which auction takes place in these mandis needs to be improved? It is so non-transparent. Which farmer in this country is going to oppose it? Which farmer in this country or farm union in this country would oppose a government wanting to give better MSP, improved MSP, or better delivery of MSP? None. Which farm union in this country is going to say, don't open more mandis, which is so badly needed, which is what the government has promised 20 times. This country needs about 40,000 agriculture mandis. We probably have less than 10,000. Which farm union is going to oppose it? None. So yes, reforms are welcome. Reforms should take place. Farm unions, farmers will not oppose it. But measures to throttle farmers' life, measures to impose things on farmers against their will be opposed. Why not? Don't we live in democracy? Last time I checked, they formally said that we did.
So Yadav, thank you so much for joining us. We had half an hour time with you. We've run out of that time. Thank you so much for giving us time on a regular basis. There is, of course, a much longer road here for the farmers, like we've been telling our audience over the last few days. Issues that existed before these 3 farm laws were brought in, and issues that will continue to persist after. This is really when our farmers need our help most of all. We're going to continue to keep this the problems of our farmers center stage here on this channel at least. Thank you, Mr. Yadav. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.